This beautiful pearl drops tiara was destined to be an heirloom of Russian imperial family, but ended up locked in the bank safe in the Philippines. The pearl pendant kokoshnik tiara was originally made in 1841 for Alexandra Fyodorovna, the wife of Tsar Nicholas I, by the court jeweler Bolin, the same manufacturer that created the famous Vladimir tiara. Kokoshnik is a Russian traditional headdress, and this shape became really popular for tiaras in 19th century. It features 25 large pearl pendants, which hang from diamond arches. In Russia, tiara has a name of the Russian beauty, but Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna was a German-born princess. As part of Russian crown jewels, tiara passed through generations of the Romanov dynasty and became a favorite of Tsarina Maria Fyodorovna, the wife of Tsar Alexander III, first owner's grandson. Empress Maria was a Danish princess and sister of English Queen Alexandra. She had vast jewellery collection, which could compete with sparkly masterpieces of British royal family. Because of her, kokoshnik-style tiaras appeared in the jewellery box of Queen Alexandra. English king's wife requested tiara to be made similar to the one owned by her sister. Tsarina Maria Fyodorovna was not depicted wearing the pearl drop tiara, but continued to use it in her widowhood. In outbreak of Russian Revolution in 1917, she fled the country and later learned the horrifying news about tragic destiny of her family. Both of her sons and 5 grandchildren were killed by Bolsheviks. She lived rest of her life in exile, managing to bring out some of her jewels, but not the pearl pendant tiara. It was confiscated, along other Russian crown jewels. The Dowager Empress died on the 13th of October 1928 in Denmark at the age of 80. A year earlier, her tiara was sold by Soviet government in the auction. When later the Soviets realized what treasure they had lost, they made a replica, which is now on display at the Diamond Fund in Kremlin. But what happened to the real tiara? Soviet government sold the heirloom of the Romanovs with lots of other imperial jewels, and later it was bought by the Duke of Marlborough for his wife Gladys. They belonged to the same illustrious Spencer-Churchill family as Princess Diana, who wore the similar pearl tiara from the royal family collection, but didn't like it as she often complained that it was heavy and gave her headaches. But Gladys seems to like hers and took a series of selfies wearing the pearl kokoshnik in front of the mirror. The Duchess was well-known beauty and eccentric woman. One glance of her big blue eyes would drive men crazy with desire. She later claimed she had slept with every prime minister in Europe and most kings. But being obsessed with improving what was already perfect, she underwent a botched beauty treatment by having wax injected into her nose. The wax slipped, and instead of ideal Grecian profile, the procedure left her with permanently bulky jaw. Gladys fell in love with her future husband Charles Spencer-Churchill when she was only 16. But it took her 25 years to achieve her goal of becoming the Duchess of Marlborough. Only in 1921, after Duke's divorce, the lovers were finally wedded in Paris. Gladys was 40 by that time. The Duke adored his new wife and ordered a pair of Sphinx to be made for his garden in Blenheim Palace with Gladys' face. On the ceiling of the portico, her famous blue eyes were painted. But with the time passed, the couple began drifting apart. Later in their unhappy childless marriage, she kept a revolver in her bedroom to prevent her husband's entry. He evicted her from his ancestral home, and only his death in 1930 prevented their inevitable divorce. The Duchess lived the life of a hermit, trusting dogs, rather than people. In 1960s, she was forcibly moved to a mental hospital, and in 1977 died at the age of 96. By strange coincidence, on the 13th of October, same day as the previous owner of the tiara, Empress Maria. Do you believe that jewels can have mystical power and even affect our fate? A year after Gladys's death, the tiara was auctioned again. Who became the next owner? In more than 100 years after its creation, the Romanovs tiara ended up on the other side of the world. In 1978, it was bought at auction by Imelda Marcos, the wife of Ferdinand Marcos, a Filipino dictator and one of the most controversial leaders of the 20th century. It was said that the tiara was purchased under dubious circumstances, possibly using state funds. The president and associates are estimated to have stolen as much as $10 billion from state coffers during his 21-year rule. Cash was stashed in foreign bank accounts or plowed into art masterpieces and jewelry. The tiara was among many other expensive jewels purchased by Imelda, but the most famous were her thousands of shoes. Imelda's name even became a kind of shorthand for people with large shoe collections. When disgraced couple fled, their remaining possessions were confiscated, including more than 1,000 pairs of shoes and 800 handbags in Malacanang Palace. The Russian pearl pendant tiara survived another revolution and now reportedly sits in a bank vault in the Philippines. Imelda Marcos is 93 years old. Will she die on the 13th of October?